Welcome to Lesson 4 in Unit 11, A Home for a Penguin. In this lesson, students will work to answer the question, how can we make sure that solid ice doesn't melt in our habitat? In this lesson, students describe the properties of 6 potential insulating materials to use in their habitat design. They plan and conduct an experiment to figure out which materials have the best properties to use in their habitat. Students figure out that the materials and their properties can be used for different purposes, and not all materials are useful for the same projects. Some of the materials for the design challenge have properties that meet their design needs better than others. Students make connections to the storyline by using evidence from their investigations to choose the best insulation materials for their penguin habitat. There are several opportunities for ELA and social studies cross-curricular connections throughout the lesson. You can look for specific standard connections in the Unit 11 Teacher Guide. This lesson will take approximately 5 days to complete. To begin the Engage portion, you'll remind students of the anchoring problem and how they are trying to figure out the materials to use to design a penguin habitat. You'll ask students questions about what they've learned so far and what they still need to figure out. You'll then display a winter weather scene and ask students how they keep warm in winter, as well as how they keep things cold on hot days. You'll revisit the driving question board to add any new questions and highlight others connected to the learning goals of this lesson by calling attention to questions about materials or how to build a habitat. For the Explore portion, you'll direct students to the Insulating Materials Experiment student journal pages. Be sure to see the tutorial slides for information on materials and procedures. For the Explain portion, you'll bring the class together and lead a discussion about students' observations from the Insulating Materials Experiment. You'll use the provided questions to guide your discussion around the question, how can we make sure that solid ice doesn't melt in our habitat? The goal of this class discussion is to use data from the thermometers to compare how well each of the materials insulates. You'll use the discussion to create the Lesson 4 summary chart. By the end of the discussion, students should understand that some of the materials for their designs have properties that meet their design needs better than others, and they want to pick materials that are the best insulators to keep the penguins cool. You'll have students use the temperature data from their table to independently complete the conclusion on the Insulating Materials Experiment student journal pages. During the discussion, you'll post the insulation vocabulary card. During the Elaborate, you'll discuss the importance of materials and ask students what other materials might be used in zoo habitats. You'll then have students partner read the MySci Materials in Zoos article. For the Evaluate, you'll remind students of the design goals for their penguin habitat. You'll then have students individually complete the Meeting Needs of Penguins and People student journal page. To support student sense-making across the unit, you'll orient them back to the driving question board. You'll ask, did we answer any of the questions on our driving question board? If there are questions that have been answered, you can remove them from the driving question board and place them on the summary charts. You can use this as an opportunity to build class consensus to answer the section driving question, what do we need to know to design a zoo habitat? Refer to the Section 1 performance levels to summatively assess student progress for this section. You can have students use the self-check form to evaluate their own learning in this section. This is an instructional tool that can be used as a metacognitive practice for students to reflect on their learning, express their engagement and excitement levels for the topics they have learned so far. This tool will also allow students to reflect on their science identities and community. By the end of this lesson, students will have planned and conducted an experiment to determine the insulating properties of various materials. In the next section, students will apply their scientific findings as they take on the role of engineer to build and test their penguin habitat. For more information about this unit, visit myscipartners.com.